ThinkProgress reports that the Wisconsin state legislature has lined up several disastrous bills this week designed to deregulate state campaign finance law, dissolve the state ethics and elections board, and take away a tool prosecutors use to investigate political crimes. That sounds about right. So essentially, Scott Walker is looking to turn his state into a free-for-all. Oh boy. So let's get into some of the details, and there's a lot here. Now, one bill that was passed recently by the Republican-controlled state Senate and Assembly this week limits the tools available to investigate corrupt officials on the city, county, and state level. See, for 100 years, Wisconsin had a process called John Doe, a John Doe investigation. Now, using that, prosecutors have been able to subpoena witnesses and gather evidence to present a judge without actually having to convene a grand jury. Now, this system had been used successfully in Wisconsin to crack down on corruption. Now, in the early 2000s, in fact, this investigative system helped prosecutors gather evidence necessary to expose several Democrats and Republicans who committed a host of felonies and misdemeanors while in office, essentially abusing their power as a representative. Now, what were some of those crimes? Well, they were campaigning on the clock, which is a huge no-no, as state employees, to extortion and abuse of power. So they were able to use this investigative tool to crack down on wrongdoing in government, to root out the corruption. Now that's a good thing. It's a success, right? Well, of course, when something is successful and works, Republicans want to get rid of it. If Walker signs a new bill, these investigations would be limited. Anything to do with ethics, lobbying, and law, ThinkProgress writes, campaign finance, or elections will now be extremely curtailed from the John Doe process. The bill also bars prosecutors from using the John Doe law to look into things like identity theft, mortgage fraud, dealing small amounts of heroin and cocaine, and theft reaching into millions of dollars. Wow. So what was the reason that Republicans actually targeted this law if it worked for so long? Well, it turns out they didn't like it when the law was turned on them. Republicans set their sights on reforming the John Doe process after it was used against Scott Walker and his staff, 6 of whom ended up being convicted for embezzlement and other charges. Oh, look at that. They found some of my staff full of wrongdoing. Well, instead of saying, hey, you know what? It worked. Great law. It worked. I didn't know those guys working for me were corrupt. No, instead it's like, shit, they used it against us. Let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of it. So we can keep doing wrong things. So we can keep embezzling from the state. Amazing. It's amazing. Okay, more. A second John Doe investigation targeted Walker himself for illegally coordinating with the outside conservative groups during the 2012 recall election. And, of course, that investigation was ended earlier this year by the state Supreme Court, which, strangely, they ordered all that evidence destroyed. Why? Well, several judges on that court were elected with the help of the same outside advocacy group under investigation. Boy, there's something rotten in Wisconsin. And it's Republicans. All right. Now, another bill has to do with campaign finance. Now, this week, the legislature will debate a bill to make several changes to Wisconsin's campaign finance law. Basically, what it would do is it would double the amount that can be donated to an individual candidate. And it would also allow outside groups to anonymously collect unlimited amounts of money and coordinate with those candidates in advertising and campaigning. Well, so wait a minute. You double the limit, but then you say outside groups have no limit. You can do it anonymously, and you can coordinate with the candidate. bill also watered down the disclosure requirements for donations to candidates. Going forward, donors would only have to disclose their occupation, not their specific employer. Now, ThinkProgress gives a good example. A group of attorneys for fossil fuel companies who donate to a campaign promising to get rid of environmental regulations would only have to identify themselves as lawyers. No, wait a minute here. I thought Republicans were supposed to be about small government and accountability. And transparency, even. Apparently not. Additionally, this bill would allow outside groups, as they claim express advocacy is not their main purpose, to run coordinated ads up till 60 days before an election. And that's not all. On top of all of this, they're also debating a bill that would eliminate the Elections and Ethics Board. Yes, they want to take the nonpartisan Government Accountability Board in Wisconsin. They want to take it and they want to split it apart into two partisan agencies. One of them to oversee elections and one to investigate and enforce ethics laws. Each would have a panel of 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans on it. Now, the agencies can only act if a majority of the board members vote together. So you need a simple majority. Now, this change would take place just 4 months before the 2016 presidential elections. Remember, they oversee elections, as well as investigate and enforce ethics law. Seems rather dubious, right? And making it partisan, putting 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans, well, that would pretty much guarantee that the board will get nothing done. You know who else is set up in that way? The FEC. The Federal Election Commission is set up with an equal group of Democrats and Republicans, and they can't agree on anything. FEC Chairwoman M. Ann Ravel said in an interview, people think the FEC is dysfunctional? It's worse than dysfunctional. That's what they want to do to this board in Wisconsin that oversees ethics in elections. That's what they want to do. They want to make it so they can't do anything, so that Scott Walker and his cronies can continue to break the fucking law. That's what they want to do. All these bills together would make Wisconsin a haven of corruption. You might as well rename it Cokeland. That's essentially what it's turning into. And this is what happens when people don't get out to vote, working people. When progressives stay home and let Republicans sweep into power, they immediately make it so much easier to lie, cheat, and steal elections, and make it impossible to hold politicians accountable for committing crimes. That's what happens. And this is incredibly blatant. I'm surprised it's not everywhere in the media. It should make you livid. Livid, even if you don't live in Wisconsin. It should make you livid. Because you don't think it will honestly stay in Wisconsin, do you? No. 33 states have a Republican majority. 31 states have a Republican governor. They have the majority. They have the numbers to make this work across a lot of the United States. So if you think it won't come there, you think it won't come to your house, to your state, you either are living in California and New York, or you're mental, or you don't know how politics works. And this goes to my overall message. Liberals, presidential elections mean dick if you don't vote in any other elections. Midterms matter. State elections matter. Governor's elections matter. Local elections matter. Get out and vote. Or else you're going to end up living in a place like Scott Walker's stand. Even if somehow we end up getting a Bernie presidency. It's not going to change a whole lot if everything is Republican controlled other than the White House. You're going to have nothing but blocked legislation as far as the eye can see, and dysfunction. Because that's what they do. They get elected into government so they can break it. They can make it not work so that we'll privatize it. And that's what it is. And that's what they do at the state level. Elections do matter so much more at the local level. And that's why, of course, Republicans have begun really targeting them with loose campaign finance laws and the relative cheapness of buying a local politician. It's perfect. The local level, states are perfect grounds for testing terrible conservative policies. And that's exactly what they've done. Look at Kansas. And now, look at what they're trying to do in Wisconsin. That's what they do. They test these laws and to see if they can bring them to the national level. Because that's ultimately what they plan to do. That's why it matters. And that's why you need to get out and vote while it still matters.